See, the thing with all these networks is that they take a while to build, whether it be Hivemapper or even a Helium or whatever it is. Anything that has like network effects takes a while for it to reach full maturity and full value. I mean, look at Uber. Uber took them a bunch of years to
Yeah,
get to where they're at today. They burned a lot of cash along the way, but now they're just generating massive amounts of cash flow, right? And so
absolutely.
you got to have the patience to kind of stick with it to its, place because all these things are compounding in value, right? You get
Absolutely.
10 customers, right? And then boom, you get 50 customers and then those customers increase their spend, right? Like the compounding value associated with these networks is quite extraordinary, but you got to be patient and you got to be disciplined and you got to stay focused.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Culture and Crypto Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Hill II, partner here at London York. We're a private family fund. Our guest today is Ariel Seidman, founder and CEO at Hivemapper. Prior to founding Hivemapper, Ariel held roles as CEO and founder at Gigwalk, a mobile innovation company that was named one of the top 10 mobile innovations by Fast Company. Ariel also worked at Yahoo and Oracle as a product manager, and Ariel has over 20 years of experience in maps. This is someone I've definitely been excited to have on the cast since I had the idea for it. So without further ado, let's welcome Ariel to the Culture and Crypto podcast. How's it going, Ariel?
It's going great, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate you making the time. I know it took a little bit to tie you down with consensus going on, so I know that was a little more important than me. So glad
I don't know more important, which is a
consensus.
lot going on.
It's all good. It's all good. So to get us started, for those who may not be familiar with you or Hivemapper, can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you first learned about Bitcoin and crypto?
Okay. I'll start with my background and then I'll talk a little bit about kind of crypto, how we came to crypto. So I think you covered it pretty well, right? Like really my first job out of school was at Yahoo back in the day, like 2005 timeframe, and it was still a great time to be at Yahoo. The people there were incredible. Many people who were at Yahoo at that time then went off to go build some amazing things across Silicon Valley over the last 10, 12 years. So just exceptional people. I worked in the search group. Within the search group sat basically local data, Yahoo Maps. It was a really, really important product and data set for us. The reason being is roughly 30% of all queries coming into search at the time were related to places, understanding geography, getting
Really?
from one location to the other. And so it was a really important class of queries for us, also very monetizable in many ways. So anyways, I was at the time where Yahoo Maps, we had about like 90% market share. We'd effectively put MapQuest out of the business. But then Google Maps started to really come onto the scene. And what they did, which was really innovative, in addition to some of the UX stuff they did, they just poured a ton of money into actually collecting their own data.
Right.
And whether that be, satellites, airplanes, Google Street View, these were massive data collection programs that just fed incredible amounts of really high quality data into Google Maps. And that's what really enabled them taking market share from us ultimately. Um, kind of fast forwarding to when I left, I definitely, yeah, what I saw was Google Maps kind of pulling away into the dominant mapping provider that we all know today.
Yeah.
Um, and Yahoo, unfortunately, at the time was just not willing to pony up the kind of cash, the kind of capital needed to go and really crawl the physical world. Because that's what you're doing with maps is like you're crawling the physical world to be able to see and understand it so that you can effectively map it. But what became clear to me was around 2015, 2016, this is after my first company, was that there was this really interesting opportunity that would enable us to crowdsource a map, right? Which is how you build a map cost effectively while maintaining quality. The reason being is a lot of the sensors, the camera technology and other sensors required the price of all those different components had come down pretty dramatically. And so, we'll go a little bit into like the long winding path to where we are today. It was not an overnight success. Um, so we'll talk a little bit about that. To get to your second part of your question, in terms of Bitcoin and Ethereum, I owned both at a certain time, probably sold a little bit too early.
Didn't
But
we
I've,
all? Didn't
yeah,
we all?
yeah, exactly. But I definitely was, I wouldn't consider myself like a hardcore crypto
Crypto guy.
maxi. I was curious, and so I think the best way to learn about a new technology is to actually participate in it, and to really dig into it. So I was always curious, but then I start to like this is like 2020 when I start to really think through like the business model for Hivemapper, and I'd seen some other stuff kind of in the crypto world that I start to kind of put all the pieces together. I said, okay, this is a very interesting technology where Hivemapper can use it for its specific use case, its specific application in a very novel way. And we were definitely inspired by the likes of Helium, who had kind of really revolutionized how you use crypto in the context of
Absolutely.
really building out these large scale networks. So I'll pause there. We can kind of go into more of this.
Yeah, yeah. You said so many nuggets in there. One I wanted to pick up on, just kind of referring back to your Yahoo days. You said that 30% of the searches that you guys received were pretty much like uh, map related. Can
Yeah.
you tell me, and you were there at the time, so can you tell me why they didn't start to move into mapping when they saw Google kind of jumping on it and say, hey, there might be something here we need to capitalize on with maps?
Yeah. Well, we definitely we definitely had a map to be clear, but what we did was effectively we licensed data from third parties, and a lot of those companies that we license data from are really high quality companies to be clear. But what Google showed with Google Maps was they were willing to take data collection, data processing, in terms of maps and places and all that, to a whole other level, right? And I think that was something that, from a Yahoo perspective, the cost to go do that and compete at the same level that Google was in Maps, there just wasn't the appetite for it, right?
Gotcha.
And going one level deeper, let's say so there's one layer of the map called places, right? So this would be like, pizza shop, pest control business, restaurants, grocery stores, FedEx locations, all that kind of stuff. Um, there's literally tens of millions, if not, many more of those types of businesses all over the world. And so you got to know obviously where it's located. You ideally want a photo of it or many photos of it. You want interior photos, you want exterior photos, you want the hours of operation, right? You want the website, all of this information about these different places. And so it's a very challenging data set, just places, right? To
Yeah.
be able to manage that and maintain that on a global level, right? I mean, just even doing it in one country like the US, like a large country like the US, is pretty challenging. So that's just one layer of the map, right? Then you need
Right.
obviously roads. Okay, like, how many lanes are in this road? What direction traffic flow in this road? Is there a stop sign? What's the name of this road? What's the address for this building versus that building for this, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a very large and complicated data set that just costs a lot of money if you're not doing it in a decentralized way that we are, uh,
Absolutely.
to be able to build and manage and maintain.
No, it makes perfect sense. And it kind of leads into my next question, which was something I found really interesting and special actually about Hive Mappers, that you guys already mapped out 20% of the world's roads in probably a little over 18 months, which, first of all, congratulations. That's an incredible accomplishment in itself. Um, the question I had off that, actually, I have two. The first one was, in which regions are you seeing the fastest growth in roads mapped? And then the second one was, is that core amount of data coming from, say, like a small group of power users, or is it coming from, majority of like the overall users?
Yeah, two excellent questions. Okay, so I would say we definitely do best in places like the US, EU, certain parts of Asia like South Korea, Japan, Manila, Philippines, Singapore, those types of places.
Okay.
Um, that is primarily due to the fact that that's where we have our like customers using the maps today. That's primarily where we have our customers, right? So,
Perfect. Makes sense.
it is definitely, and we do that by design, right? Like if we were to go build a map of
Yeah.
um, South Africa right now, as beautiful of a country as South Africa is, and as much as I want to go build a map of South Africa right now,
It's
we
not.
just don't have a lot of demand for that country,
Right.
unfortunately, right now. And so we do not prioritize it, relative to, places like a Portugal, a
Gotcha.
Spain, a France, so forth. So that is very much. I mean, look, you can map, and if you live in South Africa, you want to participate and build a map, absolutely. Like we'd love to have you. I think people should just know, like, you're definitely not going to, from a rewards perspective, you will
Right.
not earn as much as somebody in like a Tokyo or a Los Angeles or something like that. Okay, so that's one dimension. There was another part of your question now that is evading me, or that I forgot. I
Um,
apologize.
yeah, yeah. The second one was the first one was about which areas were the fastest
Oh, the
growth. So you,
power users, yeah, the
yeah,
power users,
our
yeah.
users.
Okay, so we track that pretty carefully.
Okay.
It is definitely the case that there's professional drivers, right? So these are Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, truck drivers, those kinds of folk that they're on the road like literally 30, 40 hours a week. That's their job, is to
Right.
drive. And so, we don't know for certain what percentage of the network is made up of those people because we don't
Right.
ask people for their jobs or, that kind of stuff. But we suspect that roughly 50% of the network is made up of professional drivers,
Okay.
and they certainly contribute, a significant percent. I drive, basically for work. I just commute to the office every single day. And I do,
Right.
I go to a friend's house, or I go to a restaurant or whatever it is, or run some errands over the weekend, but I'm not out on the road 8 hours a day.
Right. I get
So
it
like
because you're trying
my
to build it.
contributions, yeah. So like I think literally like my contributions are going to be like, 1/10 of like an Uber driver. Um,
Absolutely.
and so I think that we're definitely really focused on the commercial vehicles, professional drivers, whether you're attached to a commercial vehicle fleet or whether you're just an independent, it doesn't really matter that much to us. But yeah, they definitely like make up the bulk of the map for sure.
Perfect. Okay, cool. That was kind of what I was getting the sense of. Um, Now my next question was really getting into the reward. So Hivemapper allows users to own and earn money from sharing their dashcam data, which was another reason I wanted to invest early. And for everyone watching, I am an investor for full disclosure. Um, can you tell us a little more, Ariel, about the power that this unlocks by users being able to own and earn money from their own
Yeah.
uh, mapping data?
Yeah. So I want to like make something a little bit. I just want to just maybe slightly correct it. We don't.
Yeah, go for it.
You earn honey tokens, right? Um, and so it's not like per se cash the way that a lot of people will think about it if they're watching this.
Yeah.
Like we don't give USDC, we don't give like US dollars out. The rewards are done in honey tokens.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I apologize for that, guys, for
yeah.
not clarifying on that.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but like I just want to make sure that for your audience. Um,
That's
okay. Yeah, look, it's obviously been very effective in terms of giving people a real strong motivation, to participate. And I think that's, yeah. If you go back to like the age of, like 2008 timeframe when Waze was really building out their map, they had these volunteers, right? There were kind of two modes of contribution in Waze, right? One, which is like you and I driving around with it, maybe saying, oh, yeah, there's a cop here or whatever it is. And obviously like tens of millions of people do that. In terms of just driving around with their app, you're giving them your GPS traces, right?
yeah,
Then there's another mode of contribution, which obviously far fewer people do, but is also really, really important and valuable, which is effectively called map editing. And so these people sitting at their desk at home on this website of theirs, where you literally go into a map and you're like, okay, this road over here, this is one way, there's a stop sign over here, or there's a traffic light at this intersection.
Yeah.
And every single one of those little details needs to actually be manually edited into the map. And there's like
Really?
30,000 people that, yeah, 30,000
Okay.
people who, like at the peak of Waze, there were about 30,000 people who did this kind of stuff.
Cool.
Now I'm sure it's far fewer, but um, look, the when Google ultimately bought Waze, it was like $1.2 billion. All of those people who contributed, and I would argue without them, there's no Waze, there's no map, there's no data.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, that they they got like a Google T-shirt or something like that, right? That was
Oh,
about it. And I think that's kind of bullshit.
personally, I
Because
agree.
yeah, and so I mean, look, a lot of people say, well, they did it volunteer, they did it for free. That's all true, right? I don't argue with
Yeah.
any of that. And they kind of got ripped off.
They did because they're the ones that actually provided the real value that
Yeah,
raised the company valuation enough to get bought by Google at that number.
exactly,
Because
exactly.
without those people doing what you were talking about, that wouldn't have been possible. Is that part of some of that frustration towards that process? Is that some of what put that extra fire under you to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to build Hivemapper. We're going to do it decentralized. We're going to try to share some of this
Yeah,
wealth and
yeah,
value based
1,000%.
with.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 1,000%. Right. That was definitely a big motivation, which is like I felt like a lot of companies and or people as well were giving, well, let's start with people. I think
Okay.
people were unknowingly contributing to these very large, very valuable data sets for free, right? And then those organizations, those companies would effectively use that free data and go and monetize it. Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, OpenStreetMap is a great example of this
That's the Web
today.
2 model.
What's that?
That's the Web 2 model,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much.
100%. Right. It was like basically like free labor, free data,
Yep.
here you go. And I think now people have kind of wised up to this, right? Like, wait, wait,
Yeah.
wait, what's going on here, I mean,
Absolutely.
OpenStreetMap is a great example of this where there's, many very, very large and wealthy companies that use all of the OpenStreetMap data for free, right? And look, they're not doing anything illegal, to be clear, but I think that we as a industry, and mapping is one industry where really really high value data has huge impact, but there's other industries as well,
Yep.
have a similar data set, not similar data set, but also they have data sets that are very powerful, very valuable. And I think that people should wise up to the fact of like, what are you giving over, right? Like, how are
Right.
you handing over this data? And you really ought not to be handing it over for free.
And
Um,
go ahead.
yeah, so that was definitely a big motivation of mine. In terms of the crypto and the decentralization, was how do you create a map which is very much, the people who are building it are rewarded for helping build it. And now look, uh, what we've tried to design here is a system where, and I kind of alluded to this before, where if you're mapping in South Africa, just because there's simply not as much economic activity happening in South Africa, or name maybe a small town in Indiana or Illinois or whatever it is, as there is in places like Chicago or Los Angeles or London, or
Yeah.
Singapore, right? There's just fundamentally more economic activity, and because there's a lot more economic activity, there's more demands for maps, right? These are also much more complicated cities, and so there's more value, right? And so you're going to be rewarded, even though some people be like, well, that's not fair. Like somebody driving in a small town in Illinois or Indiana
Right.
or South Africa, they're driving just as much as somebody is in a
Right.
Singapore, a Tokyo, or a Chicago, but like that's not.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't match up, which makes sense.
Yep.
Um, really the value is going to accrue to wherever the most action and activities at, which makes
Yeah.
total sense. And I think that's actually
I think I got accused of being like a capitalist by somebody for like creating a system that does that operates like that.
I mean, you're
And
going to get accused no matter what, right?
yeah,
So, but I think you guys have a very strong community. The Hivemapper, the entire community is very strong. I think the majority of people are really happy with what you guys are looking to build.
yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
so
think.
it's fine. You're right. Like it doesn't matter. The thing that it doesn't matter whether and I like the name of your podcast by the way, right? Because culture and like culture plays a big part in crypto for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and what I've observed is that when in the harder moments and last year, definitely was like a really bad bear market, right?
yes.
And
Which I give you guys props for building through because building through a bear market is not easy.
yeah, no, it was not fun. But you learn. So a couple thoughts, right? One is that you got to learn how to build through various market cycles because you will. I mean, like what we're doing will take us, 7, 10, 12 years, right? And so there will be various markets, and you just got to learn how to kind of build through those markets and not get too high or too low. The other observation is, when times were really tough and like there was a lot of negativity, around crypto, around everything related to technology last year, there was a lot of people who were all pissy about, whatever, a whole bunch of issues. And some of them were very valid and some of them were not valid, but people were just angry basically, and they would take out that anger, oftentimes directed at me, which is fine. I have no issue with that. And then when
Yeah,
times are good, people are also angry because then they're like, wait, I didn't get enough, of the honey or
yeah,
this or whatever it is.
or 1,000x gain. I get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially building in crypto because everything is uh, when token, when number go up. It can make it frustrating. I could feel that on a founder who's like, "Hey, I'm trying to build something that's long lasting, and that you can't microwave Thanksgiving dinner, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. That's a good way of saying
Right?
it.
So,
Yeah.
so I think about that a lot, and I'm sure that you probably think about that too when
Yeah.
people bring these type of things up, and you're like, "Hey, look,
Like,
we're building." Go ahead.
yeah, I thought about this a little bit. It's like if you bought a dash cam last year, whatever, sometime last year, Q1 of last year, right? You install that dash cam and you just drove like you normally drive, right? In other words, you didn't do anything specific for Hivemapper, right? You just went about
Right.
your day and drove, and the dash cam was doing its thing, and you never checked Twitter or Hivemapper Twitter. You never checked Discord,
Please
which
don't.
what's that?
I just said, yeah, please don't, guys. Just don't
Yeah,
check
like
how.
if you never did any of that, you would be far better off than somebody who was like trying to optimize every last kilometer that they were driving to make sure they were getting the most amount of honey tokens, and they were constantly in Discord and Twitter yelling about this and this and this. And the
Yeah,
reason being is that second person is extremely emotional, right? They're just like their emotions are way up, way down, way up, way down, right? And so they're probably going to give up or, stop doing it or whatever it is. Whereas the first person is, not affected by, the daily ups and downs of the project. And they're just being, and so they're not going to make an emotional decision. And, look, every to each their own. Like it's not a judgment on one group or the other, but it's simply, and we have both, obviously, in the community now. The community's large enough, and but I think if you kind of just take a step back and you observe those two different groups, I think the first group of people are just going to be a little bit more sane, and they'll probably like just be better off over the long term.
absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Um, while we were kind of on the actual hardware itself, you guys just not too long ago released a new dash cam called the Bee.
Yeah.
There's also, you know, I wanted to talk about ways to map. So there's kind of two ways to interact with Hivemapper. You could interact through your phone with Buzz, and then there's the Bee, the dash cam. So
Yeah.
can you kind of talk to both of those points about Buzz and then also about the new dash cam and why this one is so much better for users compared to the previous one?
Yeah. So, okay, there's actually three modes of contribution. You're right. For drivers, there's two. So that would be the dash cam, right, or the app where you can buzz different reports and stuff like that.
Yep.
Um, and there's a third mode of contribution that doesn't require a car or even an app for that matter. You basically are just, pull up a web browser on your phone or your computer, and you can basically train the AI models by doing various data labeling tasks.
Mm.
Um, and so that is another mode of contribution. We refer to that as AI trainers. Um, and so yeah, those are the three different modes of contribution. And I'm sorry, what was the core thing in terms of the Bee? Yes.
Yep.
Um, so the Bee is a new device. It will start to ship in Q3, so probably start to ship in the September timeframe, and then kind of scale up our manufacturing in October, November timeframe. And there's a couple of really important things about the Bee. One is the experience is even more passive than what we have today, right? And so that's really important for contributors, right? Like what do
Yep.
you want to do? Like you just want to install the device,
Oh,
and it takes 10 minutes to install the device, maybe 15 minutes to install the device, get it set up properly, and then never think about it again, right? That's the ideal situation, the ideal case. And the B brings us really, really close to that objective, right? Especially if you buy the LTE version, where it just automatically offloads the data and you never have to touch it, like literally don't have to touch it.
that's
um
perfect.
yeah, and so that's huge, right? In terms of contributors, just like not having to think about it. It also just has a lot more compute on the device. And so this really opens us up to be able to do, really powerful things, not just from a mapping perspective, which of course we will do, but
Yep.
also in terms of giving you as a driver more value, more capability. So for example, if you get into a car accident, we'll have 30 frames per second video. If you had to take evasive action to avoid somebody, we'll keep the 30 seconds and before and after that event, right, is in addition to the entire event.
Right.
So all of those capabilities give you as a driver, more insurance, more safety, more peace of mind that we think is really important.
Absolutely.
Um, and then the other thing it opens up for us is commercial fleets, right? So a commercial fleet, let's say a company is a pest control business or lawn fertilizing business or whatever, they have 300 vehicles. They can install these, right? And it provides a lot of the safety and reliability capabilities that those companies want, right? Because, look, if you're a 300 person company or 500 person company, and if the unimaginable happens, which is one of your drivers is in an accident where they are killed, that is, financially could destroy your company. And
Absolutely.
obviously, just, incredibly sad for that person. Kills, it really, really hurts morale. So the company owner is going to spend, real dollars to make sure that people are driving safely, that if there is an incident, they have all the track record for the insurance purposes and stuff like that. And so those are the capabilities that the B now offers, where we can attack the commercial fleets market, whereas we could not do that with the previous generation of devices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because that was literally my next question was about fleets. Um, and just talking about the response from fleet owners and if there was any other upcoming functionality to integrate with fleet owners. And I know there's probably two types of fleet owners. So I don't know if you kind of wanted to touch on that, like traditional fleets and then people who are just, hey, I'm going to buy some dash cams for friends and family.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think what's happening with Hivemapper is kind of like a natural course. You saw this with Bitcoin, you saw this with Ethereum. With Bitcoin, in the early day, the miners, were just like people like you and me, right? Like, hey, I'm really excited about Bitcoin. I'm gonna, set up a miner. I'm gonna, whatever. In my garage, I got some extra computers. I'm gonna run them, type of thing. And then over time, the Bitcoin miners became, institutions, companies, right? And so I think this Hive mapper is kind of following a similar trajectory, where the early days was a lot of enthusiasts, a lot of mapping geeks, a lot of crypto geeks And it's great. We love them, right? They're amazing. They've gotten us to this like amazing place of building out map coverage, building out this freshness, and so that's been
Yep.
amazing. And as we look forward to get to like 500,000 vehicles on the road and the right kind of vehicles, which tend to be more commercial vehicles, right, that have to be on the road,
Yep.
attacking the commercial fleets is really important, right? Because they don't
Yeah.
care that much about the honey token price.
Oh,
They got to be out there.
yeah.
They don't care about honey tokens at all for a lot of them.
So speaking
Uh,
on that, go ahead.
what's that?
Oh, I was going to ask. I was just curious. This is very intriguing to me. I wanted to know because of that and the fact that you guys are kind of looking to leverage the fleets as like a core base for the mapping data. Have you already started working out or trying to work out any partnerships with like different groups like FedEx, UPS, maybe local trash or delivery services, things that are going to be every day out um, on the road?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, like these are like the bread. This is like I don't know the bread and butters, right term, but the commercial fleets will be the workhorse, right? So
Which,
these are garbage companies, these are delivery companies, these are pest control businesses, telecom service companies, trucking companies, you name it. Like they will be the bread and butter of, or I should say, the workhorse of the coverage that we're going to be generating, right? And so that is 1,000% the case. And it's for us, it's still early. Most of the community is still the individual Uber driver, Lyft driver, or people who are kind of building out these fleets of 20, 30, 50, vehicles. But we're starting to see the excitement around what we're building specifically for commercial fleets. And once we have very predictable delivery dates for the Bee, then those numbers will just increase, right? Because like right now, we can't tell somebody like, hey, you're gonna get your 300 dash cams, on November 30th. Yeah.
right, right. And there's two kind of questions I have that kind of piggyback off that. The first thing I think, and the reason why I think you were leaning towards fleets is for the freshness of the maps. And this is kind of what I wanted to ask. So the value of the mapping system being constantly refreshed, I think, is a key advantage to something like Google Maps. So are things like Burst or Scout something you guys introduced to help increase the freshness of the network? And can you kind of talk about what those two things kind of represent to anyone
Yeah.
may?
Yeah. It's a great question. So, yeah, so for like I mean, look, you got to have coverage, right? Like if
Yeah,
you go to a customer and you only have, I don't know, 500,000, 2 million unique road kilometers, like, it's not super interesting, right? But obviously, like now we're up there. I think we're at like 12 or 13 or something like that. So, like we've gotten to a level of scale where it's like very interesting. So that's where customers start with. Like, do you have the coverage? The second related to that is okay, if what kind of quality do you have for that coverage, right? If you have a lot of coverage, but it's kind of crappy quality, then nobody really cares. And so
right.
that's number two. Number three, and this is where we really shine, is what's the freshness? Like a lot of use cases that we're attacking now with customers, they literally want to see a given location 3, 4, 5 times per week, right?
Absolutely.
Um, especially like larger cities like a Los Angeles or a Phoenix or whatever it is, there's
Yeah,
like there's a lot of changes that are happening in any given location, road construction, events, other issues, flooding, whatever could be, there's always something going on.
yeah,
And they want to be able to track these changes very, very frequently. And
yep,
obviously that's where we shine. Now, the reason that we are so fresh obviously has to do with this incredible network of drivers and mappers, but the other aspect of it is we can see the change. So let's peel that back a little bit. If you look at Google obviously has a lot of data that is effectively motion, like they're tracking our GPS traces, and so they
yep.
can tell you by tracking our GPS traces that okay, this road segment over here, traffic usually flows at 40 miles an hour and now it's flowing at 10 miles an hour. And okay, like that's interesting. That's important, obviously, to know that the traffic is only flowing at 10 miles an hour, whereas it usually flows at 40 miles an hour. But the issue is because they don't have eyes and all they have is motion data, they don't know the reason why, right? Is it an event, right? Is it a pedestrian was struck by a vehicle? Is it a three-car crash? Is it road construction? Is it flooding? I mean, it could be 20 or 30 different things. And, if it's a little fender bender accident, that will probably get cleared out in like, 10, 15 minutes. But
Yep.
if it's like a three-car crash or, God forbid, somebody was, a pedestrian was struck by a vehicle, that's going to take a while. There's going to be a whole police investigation, right?
Yep.
Um, and so those are two very different things. But
Yes.
because we have these eyes, these cameras everywhere, we can immediately understand what the issue is, right? And then we can reroute traffic and stuff like that. The other aspect of this is because we're seeing a given location so many times, we can start to build a better understanding of that, right? So if the lighting is bad or our camera one day was obstructed by a big truck or a bus or whatever it is, that's
Yep.
okay. Like the next day we're going to see it and we'll get a better angle on it. And so you just start to build a much higher quality map, that really understands all these details because you get so many shots on goal, right? That's our concept of shots on goal. The more
Yeah.
shots on goal you have, the more likely it is you're going to win.
That's absolutely right. And the freshness, like I said, I mean, is the big differentiator because I can see how someone who's like a real estate developer or something like that, because I've looked at places on Google before, and the last time it might have been 2 or 3 years ago, and now there's a whole new house there, or there's nothing there. That freshness is huge, and I think it's going to be a big win for you guys. I did have a question regarding data. So we kind of went past this when we were talking about how the bee works. But one question I wanted to bring up, and something that some friends of mine who I told about Hivemapper was they were like, hey, that's cool. We get to share our dash cam data and we get paid for it and this honey token. But where's my data getting sold to? And what happens with that data? So this was just more about, hey,
Yeah.
I'm sharing all this dash cam data. Is If I go somewhere private, is that going to get shared? Kind of what happens with my data?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about privacy and then let's talk about customers because those are the two aspects of the question.
Yep.
So, from a privacy perspective, look, the first thing that I think it's important that everyone know is like we do not map the first, I think it's by default 500 meters of your trip and the last 500 meters of your trip. Okay.
Okay.
So that avoids us, mapping your house or mapping, your girlfriend's house or whatever it is,
Right,
right?
right, right. Whatever you got going
Yeah.
on.
And so that's number one. The second thing is that you can create what we refer to as personal privacy zones. And what that basically means is you literally just put a dot on the map and you say, do not map, anytime I drive within whatever 1 mile radius or 2 mile radius, or it can be any number you want, right? Um, then, do not map. Okay. So that could be like your office, some other location that is very
Right.
sensitive that you don't want us to map, so that's another layer of privacy. The another dimension to privacy is like there are just certain locations where we don't map, like, US military bases as an example, in and around the CIA
Right.
headquarters,
Right.
like those kinds of places. So there's a lot of layers of privacy that are built in to protect you and gives you ultimate control and flexibility over the privacy of it. In terms of where this data is ultimately going to, there's three major customer segments that we go after, or markets, I should say. So the first one is basically B2B. We're building out a set of mapping API products to go and compete with Google Maps in B2B, right? So if you never use Google Maps on your phone or on your desktop or whatever, you are still 100% utilizing Google Maps, whether you realize it or not, right? You go to Airbnb, you go to Yelp, you go to Uber, you go to FedEx, you go to a local government website, integrated into all those products is Google Maps. Okay.
Got it.
And those companies, those businesses are paying Google Maps obviously to go do that.
Yep.
So that's one dimension of this. The other, or that's one market. The other market that we're going after is automotive, really self-driving. And this is everything from what's commonly referred to as ADAS or level two. So something like a Ford Blue Cruise, right? It can drive you onto the highway, it can drive you while you're in a highway, it can drive you off the highway, it can now also drive like certain kinds of roads, right? You're still obviously in the vehicle, you're still sitting in the driver's seat, but the vehicle is doing the
The
driving
work.
of your certain scenarios. Yeah. Um, that is a very large, interesting market. It's still relatively new. There's 1.2 billion vehicles on the road. Every year we sell about 100 million vehicles. New vehicles come onto the road.
Okay.
And so it's just a very large market. And what's beautiful about it is that it's monetizable. Like, in other words, you don't get Ford Blue Cruise for free, right? You don't get Tesla self-driving for free. Like, you're paying them 800, like, more, $2,000 a year. And so that's another market, and we're competitive in both of those markets. The third market is consumer navigation app, right? So this is going head to head with Waze or Google Maps on your phone. Excuse me. We're not yet, we don't have a product there yet, quite frankly. Probably won't have one until like early next year. And really, the focus there is about utilizing those eyes, right? The fact that we understand what's going on to create a better navigational experience for you, right? Because we know what's going on. We're not
Yeah.
just guessing. And so, how do we bring to bear that product in a really, really kind of clever experience? It's something that we're actively working on.
Because what you brought up about Google just tracking motion and what you guys do with the visual, it seems like Hivemapper is able to add context to that motion that Google was able to read. Where it's like, hey, I understand there's a slowdown, but now I have context as to why this is happening. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, we add the context. We explain why there's a slowdown, and
Yep.
because we can explain why there's a slowdown, then people can make better decisions, right?
Oh yeah.
Because, three-car crash, that's going to be 3, 4, 5 hours to clear out. A little fender bender, it'll take 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, it completely changes if I'm going to stick on this path or I need to take the next exit and completely change my route. So that's very important.
Exactly. Well said.
Um, let's. There's two things I wanted to get to on the partnership side. So the first one was Helium, because you guys, one of your first major partnerships and integrations was with Helium. So I just wanted to ask, first of all, how was it working with the Helium team, and are there any other upcoming partnerships between you guys?
Yeah. Look, it's a great team, real professionals executing. Just love that team. I mean, look, I think that I've said this on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it these days, but I think that people give them a lot of shit. They grew up in an area in 2021 where it was like a lot of the things that people are upset with Helium about was out of their control, right? It was just like these
Absolutely.
crazy, chaotic, crazy markets that had lost their minds, and they kind of just got, pulled into
Yep.
that like crazy swirl, right? But if you look at their numbers, right, especially on the mobile side, I think they've been really thoughtful in terms of how they've deployed it. It's quite impressive, right? They have real revenue, like
Yeah.
they have real subscribers, right? It's no
Yes.
joke. I mean, especially if you compare that to some other deep in projects, that like is like revenue, like what was that, customers, what's that?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I have a lot of respect for them. We're trying to figure out if whether or not we can do something together on the B, specifically around mobile and LTE. There's still more work to do before we formalize anything, but obviously those conversations are ongoing.
Perfect. Perfect. And a second one on the partnership side, I know Hivemapper is obviously built on the Solana network. So, are there any plans for future collaborative efforts between Hivemapper and Solana, and maybe some integration with like Saga Phone 2 or anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, no news to share today on that front. No, but the Solana partnership has been amazing. What the entire Solana organizations, have built is quite incredible. Um, you know, people are always giving them shit one way or another, but it's like, look, that team just continues to execute. Yeah, sure, there's been some growing pains, but like,
You're gonna have that.
yeah, exactly. Like there's no product in the world, that I mean, even the iPhone, right? I mean, iPhone literally did change the world, and it has its set of issues, right? And like
Of
you're
course.
going to have that. Like it's to be expected in a lot of ways. And so I don't know. I don't get too excited one way or another, or too bent out of shape is probably the better term when you see
No, I
that
get
kind of
that.
stuff.
As you should, because there's always somebody's gonna have always have something to say no matter what, man.
Yeah.
Like Anatoli's been crushing it. You guys have been crushing it. Let them talk what they're gonna talk. Um, one thing I did want to bring up because you brought this up not too long ago about the deep in space, and Hivemapper has definitely been a big innovator in the deep in space. And I actually personally see deep in as, other than say gaming, one of the spaces where we're going to probably see mass adoption first. So my question was around that. What do you see Hivemapper doing to bring the non-crypto user into the network and start using the dash cam?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, look, there's already people on both sides, right? The customers, there's a lot of customers of ours who have like really no clue. It's not that because we hide it or anything like that, but
Right.
there's just like they don't care about the crypto side, you know.
Right.
I got to be like a little careful when I say that because people will,
I get
misinterpret
what you
that
mean.
as I don't care about crypto, or these people are stupid for not caring about crypto. You got to understand, like these customers are there to solve a very specific problem for their business,
Absolutely.
and like that's what they care about.
Yeah.
And if we can help them solve that problem for their business, then great. Like, we're happy to go do that, and we want to do that, and we're going to be focused on that. But we're not going to like inject crypto into the conversation, you know, just
Just
because
because.
it's crypto, right? Like,
Right.
uh,
No, I get where you're coming from. And this message, the conversation we're kind of having right now for anyone who's just tuning in, this is more so about something that goes on in the crypto community space,
yeah,
um, where people are more so focused on just number go up as opposed to just making something that actually works and people actually can use and enjoy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly.
and
And then
that,
yeah, we talked a little bit on the supply side, right? Like,
yeah,
Dashcam, like I think that come this time next year, I think that we'll probably have 50%, maybe 40% of all drivers will be attached to a commercial fleet, and they won't even know that, like, hey,
my
my
day.
vehicle is mapping, this garbage truck or delivery van that I'm using every single day is attached to this map that is, building a new decentralized, mapping network to go compete with Google. Like I mean, obviously they'll be able to see the dash cam. It's sitting right in front of them, 2 feet
Right.
from them. And they'll know it's mapping, but they won't know about like the crypto aspect of it, et cetera. And just because like they don't care.
Yeah, and I think that's the magic of it. You don't really need to know. It should just be a bonus.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let me pick up. Go ahead.
No, I think sometimes we do it like as a crypto community, we do ourselves a disservice by like fixating, like kind of shoving crypto down people's throats.
True.
Like if you solve a problem for a customer or user, and then they discover like, oh, then this was built on crypto, I think that's a much more natural, much more positive way to come to crypto, because you
Absolutely.
say, oh, okay, this product now solve a problem for me and I love this product. Oh, and that's cool that it's built on crypto, right? Um, you just
That should be the answer. It should always be, oh, by the way, it's also built on crypto. Oh, okay, cool. It's on a
yeah,
blockchain. Okay, cool. No, I agree 100% on that. Um, and we're about to wind down here, so I'm down to my last
yeah,
three questions. Um, this one actually is a question I actually asked Alex from Demo when we had him on the cast. It was basically just saying that, cars and culture kind of go hand in hand. Is there anything that Hivemapper is looking to do to try to pull together some car enthusiasts through the platform, or just maybe some events or other things you guys may do?
yeah. I mean, like. Well, we're pretty different than Demo in the sense of like Demo really needs diversity of cars, right?
Yes.
To be
Yes.
able to track all the different, things that they want to track about like vehicle battery life and oil and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
We don't care. Like, well, we don't really care that much if it's on like, a Mercedes commercial, van or a Ford F-150 or a semi
Yeah.
truck or, an Audi sedan or Volkswagen sedan. Like it doesn't matter that much to us as
Okay.
to like where the device is deployed. It does matter where that device goes. I'll give you like a different answer in terms of culture.
Okay.
Um, I think maps are part of the human experience, right? There's
Well,
2.5 billion people who use a map every single week, right? Millions of businesses, right? Think about a world in which like maps didn't exist. Like it would be really hard to like move, efficiently go
Greenlight.
about your day, you know?
Yes.
And so I think they just play this like absolutely critical role in your life. And I think that look, they're utility, right? It's a really, really critical utility. But what I
Absolutely.
don't think they've necessarily done very well is add a sense of culture, right? A sense of personalization of this is who I am, a sense of fun, maybe even, right? Like you're going about
Yeah.
your journey, you're exploring the world in many ways. And
Yep.
so, those are things that I think we want to be to kind of push forward on and press on and maybe bring our own point of view on as well. So I think you'll start to see that with us probably later this year, early next year.
Perfect. Definitely looking forward to it. And rolling right off the back of that, what excites you the most in the next, 24 to 36 months for Hivemapper's future?
Well, getting the B out there is huge, right? Like especially the numbers that we're starting to see here in terms of pre-orders, getting that built out is massively important and I think massively transformational for the business, for the experience, etc. Um, the other thing I'm really focused on is, some major customers now that we've been able to, move along in the data evaluation process, privacy evaluation, like the big customers who can spend a lot of money with you,
Yeah.
they don't just be like, here's my money. They do deep, very, very, very deep dives into your product, into your technology, into your privacy methodologies and approaches and so forth. And that's really, some of those are now coming to fruition. And so, we're gonna have to A, execute on those, right? But B, what does that mean? Is like the number of users on a global basis who are going to start to touch and use our data, this time next year is going to be extraordinary. Like, hundreds of millions of people.
How do you feel about that personally as a founder and you've been in maps for so
Well,
long?
it's cool. I mean, look, I don't think we've like even if you fast forward to next year, when these numbers we hit them all and so forth. I don't think we've accomplished very much in the grand scheme of things. See, the thing with all these networks is that they take a while to build, whether it be Hivemapper or even a Helium or whatever it is. Anything that has like network effects takes a while for it to reach full maturity and full value. I mean, look at Uber. Uber took them a bunch of years
Yeah.
to get to where they're at today. They burned a lot of cash along the way, but now they're just generating massive amounts of cash flow, right? And so
Absolutely.
you got to have the patience to kind of stick with it to its, place because all these things are compounding in value, right? You get
Absolutely.
10 customers, right? And then boom, you get 50 customers and then those customers increase their spend, right? Like the compounding value associated with these networks is quite extraordinary, but you got to be patient and you got to be disciplined and you got to stay focused.
Absolutely. And then I'll get into our last questions of the day, which is pretty simple. So, where do you see crypto and market adoption in general over the next 3 to 5 years?
Um, that's a great question. Well, look, I would say that if DePIN is not successful in crypto, right? This doesn't just include Hivemapper. This includes, a lot of other things,
Yeah.
like a helium, etc. Is that I think that will be a really, really negative signal for crypto. Why? Because I mean, look, the entire market cap of crypto today is something like 3 trillion plus, give or take, right? That in the public markets, that's one company. That's like Nvidia,
Yeah.
okay? Or an Apple, right?
Right.
Like that's one company.
One.
And that, I mean, look, it's impressive because they started, whatever, 10, 12 years ago. So it's still relatively new, whatever. I get that. But in order to really go after large markets, right, whether it be wireless communications, mapping, navigation, energy, etc., these deepen projects have to be successful, right? Because those are the applications, those are the products that then go and capture those cash flows in these very, very, very large markets. And if that doesn't happen, there's a question of like, where does, what is crypto good for? What is it useful for? I mean, certainly potentially games. Games is a market for sure. It's not that massive, right? If you compare it to like wireless and, automotive and navigation and self-driving and energy, etc. It's just not that big. Um, and so it has to go after these large scale, massive markets, and deepen is the primary way you're going to go do that.
I agree. It's probably the perfect way to end the cast. Um, I'm grateful to have you on. Been wanting to get you on for a minute. I greatly appreciate the conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did as well. Um, only thing I'd like to say is, man, keep up the great work. Keep doing what you guys are doing, and we definitely love to have you back on the cast sometime soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. This has been incredible. Just the conversation flowed really nicely. So thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Man, thanks for coming, Ariel, and wish you guys the best, and we will see you guys soon.
Thanks, man.
All right, have a good one.